So, hi everyone, welcome to my channel Future Tech with Navdeep. So, let's understand what is Apache Kafka and its architecture. So, think of Apache Kafka as a post office where people send their letters and receiver receive their letters. So, what Apache Kafka do? Apache Kafka organize their letters into different boxes, also called as topics in Kafka world, based on their content. And at the other side we have receiver who receive their letters, and in case the receiver lost their letters and want to read them again, Kafka retains a copy. So that is what is Apache Kafka in the simplest language. So Apache Kafka is a event based platform that is based on the publish subscribe model and is capable of handling real time data. So you might be thinking that it sounds like a normal messaging queue, right? And like RabbitMQ and all. You are right, it is a messaging queue, but what makes it unique is it is distributed. So let's understand what is a Kafka architecture. So in today's world, there are a lot of sources that are producing data at exponential rate, like IoT devices, smartphones, your databases, maybe the servers producing the logs. So there are tons of resources that are producing real-time data. So in Kafka architecture, at the left-hand side, we have a producer that can actually take the data from these sources and can then produce the data to the Kafka cluster. Okay, so what is a Kafka cluster? So Kafka cluster is a set of machines. So this is your Kafka cluster here. So these are the set of machines that are connected to each other over the network, and these machines in Kafka cluster we call them as brokers. So right now you are seeing there are three brokers in our Kafka cluster. So in a real-time Kafka cluster, you can have 100 of brokers also. So this producer takes the data from these data sources and produces the data to this broker machine. And at the right hand side, we have consumer application who can actually consume the data from these broker machine. So where the data is actually stored on these broker machines. So the Kafka cluster retains your data minimum of 7 days, and it can be maximum of 365 days, that is configurable. So where exactly the producer produces the data? The producer produces the data into something called as topics. So topic is a way of segregating your data based on their content. So let's say you have a producer that is producing the real time stock data. So in your broker there may be a topic with the name as stock, and let's say there is another producer who is connected to some database and it is producing some consumer sales data. So we can also create another topic, let's say consumer sales topic, and that can hold a different type of data. So, topics was a way of segregating the data based on the content. But wait, but there is one thing that I have not told you is that topics are distributed. So, what does that mean? It means that when you store the data in a topic, the data is stored in a distributed manner, which means the data belonging to one topic does not get stored only on one machine but on multiple machines as partitions. So can you see this command? This is a create topic command. So while creating this topic, I can tell the Kafka in how many partitions I want to distribute my data. So for this topic named as my new topic, I am telling that I want to distribute my data into three partitions. So let's say because of that last command, I have created a topic whose name is my new topic, and for that topic three partitions are created. The first partition, let's say, got created in broker 0, the second partition got created in broker 1, and the third partition got created in broker 2. Okay, so now this producer, it can produce the data to any of these partitions. So let me call them as p0, p1, p2. So as I said, this producer can produce the data to either P0, P1 or P2 based on some strategy. So when the data is produced in these partitions, the data is given something called as offsets. So think of the offset as the index. When the data will be produced in this P0, the first message, let's say this is my message M1, it will be given as index 0. The second message here will be given as index 1, and so on. Similarly, in the other partition also, the indexes will always start from 0. So let's say there is a message here it will get a 0, again this message here will get an index 1, and so on. Topic is just a name, a logical name, but the actual data gets stored inside the partition on the broker machines. So before I close this lecture, let me tell you a very important thing about Kafka, that Kafka is immutable. So what does that mean? It means once you produce the data to the Kafka, you cannot change it. So once you have produced the data, let's say at 0th index of this partition, later on you cannot go and update this one. So that is why I said that inside Kafka, data is immutable. So you can produce new data, but you cannot change the data once it is produced. So I hope you got the idea what is Kafka partition, what are offsets, and how these partitions and offsets are related to topic. So, guys, I hope you understood the Kafka architecture and its main component. We have been saying that we are sending some data to Kafka. So, what exactly are we sending? So, let's get started and let's understand what we send inside a Kafka message. So, guys, a Kafka message can have a key, a value, a timestamp, a header, and a partition. Though we can pass all these things inside a Kafka message, but the only thing that is mandatory to be sent in a Kafka message is the value part. So, guys, when the message is sent to Kafka, the message is not sent in the original form. The message is first converted into the form of binary, that is in the form of zero ones, and then sent over the network. And this entire process of converting the data from original form to the zero ones is called as serialization. And why it is done? It is done to improve the network efficiency and to save the storage space. So when the data is actually stored on the broker machine, it is stored in the form of binaries. But when the data is consumed by the consumer application, it is the responsibility of the consumer application to first convert the data from 01 into the original form, and that conversion process is called as deserialization. So serialization is done at Kafka producer and deserialization is done at Kafka consumer. So, do you remember I talked about that Kafka producer is somebody who can consume the data from different sources and can produce the data to the Kafka brokers? So, what are actually producers? So, if I have to tell you, producers are nothing but simply programs written in Java, Python, Go, C, many different languages. They are simply programs in which we use the Kafka API to connect to the Kafka cluster and to send the messages to the Kafka brokers. So can you see on my screen, this is an example of a simple Java program. But for now, I would like to answer few questions regarding producers. So the first question that might be coming into your mind is, can a single producer can produce to multiple topic at once? So the answer to this question is yes. A single producer can produce to different topic at once. So the second question that might be coming to your mind is, can a single topic receive messages from multiple producer? Is it possible? The answer again to this question is yes. A single topic can receive messages from multiple producers. So now let's talk about consumers. So consumers just like producer are nothing but simply programs. So on my screen you can see it's a example of a simple Kafka consumer written in Python. Let's talk about something more about consumers. So, who could be a consumer? A simple Java application, a Python application, or maybe a distributed framework like Spark, Flink, Kafka Stream, or any external application that knows how to connect to the Kafka cluster and consume the data. It could be a consumer. So guys, a question might be coming into your mind. Can multiple consumer can consume from the same topic? And what happen after they consume the data? Will the data will delete? Yes, it is possible that multiple consumer can consume from the same topic. So in this, let's say I have a consumer 1, let's say this is some Java application, and let's say I have a consumer 2, some Spark application. And let's say both of them wants to read from the same topic. It has, and this topic has P0, P1 and P2 partition. So obviously this consumer also has to read all the partitions here, and this second consumer also wants to read all the partition. But the thing is, they will do their own offset management. What does that mean? What is an offset management? It means, let's say the consumer 1 has read the data for the P0, so it has read the offset 0, offset 1, offset 2. So when the consumer 2 will be reading its P0, it will read its own offset. It will start from 0, 1 and 2 and so on. Okay, so they will maintain their own offset, how much data they have read and how much data they have processed. So now once these consumer has consumed the data from the topics, the data will not go anywhere. The data is retained in the Kafka, I told you, minimum for 7 days and maximum for 365 days. So one last thing about Kafka consumer is Kafka consumer are based on pull based mechanism, which means to consume the data they have to pull the data. So it's not a push based mechanism. The consumer has to come, pull the data and then process the data. So I hope you like this video. Please subscribe to my channel and click on the like button below. Thank you for liking it. Stay tuned for learning future technology with me.